This video is sponsored by Incogni. This is Moldova, a small country of 3 million people, tucked away between Ukraine to the east and Romania to the west. Last Sunday, Moldovans went to the polls to make two crucial decisions: who will be their next president, and perhaps even more significant, whether their country should join the European Union. But this election wasn't without a lot of controversy. Yes, you guessed it, alleged Russian interference everywhere. The pro-Russian oligarch Ilan Shor, a key figure in the Kremlin's covert operations in Moldova, publicly offered money to those willing to vote against EU integration. In fact, Moldovan authorities claim that nearly 14 million euros in Russian funds were funneled into the accounts of about 130,000 Moldovans in an attempt to buy their anti-EU votes. Adding to the tension, Moldova's government estimates that Russia has spent up to 100 million euros to disrupt the process, using everything from financial incentives to disinformation campaigns. For example, a fake EU document has circulated claiming that if Moldova joins the EU, the LGBTQ+ flag would be flown from government buildings 12 times per year. In another instance, a BBC producer reported witnessing a woman who, after casting her ballot, asked the election supervisor where she would be paid. Outside, when asking her directly if she had been offered cash to vote, she openly admitted it. She was upset that the man who had sent her to the polling station was no longer answering her calls, exclaiming, "He tricked me." You see, Moldova is deeply divided, largely because of Russia's influence in the separatist region of Transnistria, which borders Ukraine. Moscow has kept 1,500 troops stationed there, and pro-Russian rebels ensure that the territory stays firmly in Russia's orbit. So how did Moldova vote? It was a mixed day for pro-EU Moldovans. While the pro-EU presidential candidate led the polls, the margin was narrower than expected, and the referendum in favor of EU membership passed, but just barely. For much of the evening, the anti-EU vote was ahead, until the last hour when the Moldovan diaspora vote swung the result in favor of joining the EU. But what does it all mean? Let's break it down, starting with the presidential election. In first place was the current president, Maia Sandu, of the pro-EU Party of Action and Solidarity, with 42%. Sandu is a strong advocate for Moldova's integration into the EU, and even signed the country's EU membership application after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In second place came Alexandra Stoyanoglu from the Party of Socialists, with almost 26%. His party boycotted the EU referendum altogether. And in third place was Renato Usati from Our Party with 14%, who represented Moldova's Russian minority and takes a soft Eurosceptic stance. But since Moldova's election system requires a candidate to win over 50% of the vote for an outright victory, and none of the candidates achieved that, the top two candidates, Sandu and Stoyanoglu, will face off in a runoff in 2 weeks. Now, Moldova doesn't often make the headlines in the EU. So in order to stay up to date with their EU membership journey, I subscribe to multiple newsletters. It keeps me informed, but the flood of spam emails drives me crazy. I tried to unsubscribe and block them, but it was impossible. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of databases that hold your personal information, such as your name, your home address, login details, and your phone number. This data is for sale and could end up with criminals. And this is exactly what happened to me. I got a fake DHL email asking for money to get my package delivered, and I almost fell for it. It is not just about spam. Your data is out there for anyone to misuse. And this is where today's sponsor, Incogni, really shines. Incogni contacts these data brokers for you, requests the removal of your personal information, and even handle any objections that might come up. It's like having your personal team to clean up your digital footprint. And since many data brokers continue to collect your information after it's been removed, Incogni keeps working for you by sending repeated removal requests. If new data appears, they will automatically handle it. So protect your privacy today in 3 simple steps. Create an account, grant Incogni permission to contact data brokers, and sit back while they handle objections and keep you updated. If you go to incogni.com/EUMadeSimple and use my exclusive code EUMadeSimple, you'll get 60% off. it is a really small price to pay to protect yourself and avoid getting scammed. Let's turn back to Moldova and the recent EU referendum. The question posed to voters was simple, yet powerful. Do you support the amendment of the constitution with a view to the accession of the Republic of Moldova to the European Union? The stakes were high, as this commentator noted.
Acest referendum are cu adevărat chiar o valoare existențială pentru noi, pentru cetățenii moldoveni, fiindcă va determina alegerile de civilizație pentru statul nostru și pentru societatea moldovenească. Noi cu adevărat suntem europeni, în sensul că aderăm la civilizația europeană, sau continuăm să rămânem sovietici și aparținem unei civilizații care a plecat în istorie.
In the end, Moldova just barely voted in favor of amending its constitution, with 50.5% to 49.5%, officially setting the country on a path toward EU membership. However, the result leaves the nation on a knife edge. President Maio Sandu swiftly condemned the narrow outcome, blaming foreign influence in Moldovan politics. She called it an unprecedented assault on democracy, pointing to widespread allegations that Russia paid voters to sway the result, a claim Moscow, of course, denies. But the big question now is, how far along is Moldova, and how likely is it that Moldova will actually join the EU? Joining the EU is a four-step process, and here's how it works. First, a country applies to join the EU. If the application is accepted, the country becomes a candidate. This means they're officially running to join the EU. Next comes the negotiation phase. This is where the hard work happens. The country has to negotiate and close 35 chapters, covering different areas like the economy, judiciary, and human rights. You can pause the video now if you want to have a full read. And then finally, once all chapters are closed, the agreement needs to be ratified by all EU member states, the European Parliament, and the candidate country itself. So where is Moldova on its EU journey? Step 1 has already been completed. Moldova submitted its application for EU membership in 2022. Step 2 followed swiftly, as Moldova was granted candidate status alongside Ukraine later that year. Then in 2023, Moldova began the negotiation phase, which involves a screening process and closing 35 chapters. While negotiations have started, no chapters have been officially closed yet. But of course, Moldova faces many challenges on the path to EU accession. We have identified 7. One of the most obvious is the Transnistria conflict. Moldova's unresolved territorial dispute with the breakaway region of Transnistria, heavily influenced by Russia, presents a big hurdle. The EU typically avoids admitting countries with active conflicts. Still, it's not necessarily a deal-breaker. After all, Cyprus was accepted into the EU, even though half the country remains under Turkish control. Another challenge is public and political support. Moldovan society is divided between pro-European and pro-Russian factions. While last Sunday's election results were a win for pro-EU Moldovans, public opinion is split and could easily shift, especially when people face the strict and often tough demands that come with EU membership. Then there's the issue of economic reforms. As one of Europe's poorest nations, Moldova will need to bring its economy in line with EU standards, which is no small task. Corruption remains a major hurdle, with Moldova ranking 76th globally, the same as Hungary. To meet EU expectations and ensure EU funds aren't wasted, significant progress in fighting corruption are essential. The rule of law and judiciary is another area in need of improvement. Moldova currently ranks 68th globally, which is actually ahead of an existing EU member, Hungary, which ranks 73rd. There's also compliance with EU standards. Moldova will need to adhere to EU regulations in sectors like agriculture, environmental protection, and labor standards. This will not be easy, and it could put a strain on the Moldovan economy in the short term. And finally, perhaps the biggest challenge is political will within the EU. With EU member states deeply divided over accession of countries like Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine, the enlargement process often stalls, leaving candidate nations in limbo for years, regardless of their progress. French President Macron acknowledged this, stating it could take decades for countries like Moldova to join. He has called for reform, advocating for a multi-speed Europe, where some countries integrate more fully than others. Other experts suggest a staged accession model, where candidates move through 4 phases, each unlocking funding and greater participation in EU institutions before achieving full membership. So, with this positive referendum, will Moldova join the EU in the next few years? Well, we do not think so. Without meaningful reform to the enlargement strategy, the process risks stagnating, leaving Eastern European nations in a geopolitical gray zone and turning enlargement into a failed policy. That said, we do believe some countries are closer to joining than Moldova, and we've ranked them in an entire video that you can watch here, so make sure you check it out. Also, make sure you check out Incogni to protect your personal data today. Use my link in the description. And if you want more detail on the Moldovan referendum and election results, check the livestream we did yesterday with Moldovan experts. Let us know in the comments what you think, and if you enjoyed the video, please give us a like and subscribe. And if you want to support us further, please consider signing up to Patreon. Until next time.